Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun!
In the forgotten attic, veiled in a dusty haze, the soft glow of late sunshine painted the air through the single narrow window. An array of forgotten paraphernalia, boxes and trunks, loomed in shadowy piles, waiting silently for their tales to be unveiled once more. With each tentative footstep, the floorboards echoed beneath, as if whispering secrets as someone navigated this realm of past recollections. Amidst this surreal landscape, Jackson halted, a solemn figure amidst the fading daylight. His breath, laden with anticipation, caught momentarily. The atmosphere was heavy with a blend of antiquity and disregard, with the lingering essence of his mother's perfume, a subtle aroma amidst the stale air. 3 months had passed since the day she had gone, yet the weight of emotion gripped him as he prepared to embark on the pilgrimage of sorting through her personal effects. Bending near an old, well-traveled trunk, its brass adornments worn and dulled, he hesitated before opening it. Inside, neatly folded garments lay in patient silence, preserved like moments frozen in amber. As Jackson began to carefully remove each item, a flash of deep ebony caught his eye. He reached in, fingers brushing against something impossibly soft. Gently, he withdrew a black velvet peplum top, its rich fabric catching the light as he held it up. A lump formed in his throat as memories flooded back. He could see his mother wearing this very top, her eyes twinkling as she twirled for him, showing off how it accentuated her figure. She had always been so elegant, so comfortable in her own skin. Without conscious thought, Jackson found himself slipping off his worn flannel shirt. The velvet top whispered against his skin as he pulled it on, the fabric cool and inviting. He smoothed it down, marveling at how it hugged his torso before flaring out at the hips. Something shifted inside him, a tectonic plate of emotion sliding into a new configuration. Jackson's breath caught as he looked down at himself, seeing his body in a way he never had before. The peplum's feminine silhouette awakened feelings he had long suppressed, bringing them surging to the surface. His heart raced, a mix of exhilaration and fear coursing through his veins. For a moment, he felt truly seen, not as the person the world expected him to be, but as the person he had always been deep inside. A tear slipped down his cheek, landing on the velvet. Jackson quickly wiped it away, suddenly aware of how vulnerable he felt. He moved to take off the top, but his hands hesitated, unwilling to break the spell just yet. Instead, he found himself walking to the full-length mirror propped against the wall, its surface clouded with a fine layer of dust. With trembling fingers, he wiped it clean, revealing his reflection. The person staring back at him was both familiar and strange. The peplum top transformed his silhouette, softening angles and creating curves where there had been none before. Jackson turned slowly, taking in every angle, every nuance of his appearance. For the first time in his life, he felt a sense of rightness, as if puzzle pieces long scattered had finally clicked into place. It was terrifying and liberating all at once.
"Who are you?"
he whispered to his reflection, voice barely audible. The question hung in the air, unanswered but resonant with possibility. Jackson knew that this moment, this discovery, would change everything. He wasn't sure what lay ahead, but he knew he could no longer ignore the truth that had been revealed. With gentle reverence, he removed the peplum top, folding it carefully. Instead of returning it to the trunk, he placed it in the small box of items he planned to keep. This would be his talisman, a reminder of his mother's grace and the awakening she had inadvertently sparked. As Jackson continued to sort through his mother's belongings, his mind raced with questions and possibilities. Each item he touched seemed to take on new significance, viewed through the lens of his emerging self-awareness. Days passed, and Jackson found himself drawn back to the attic repeatedly. He would sit for hours, surrounded by his mother's things, trying on different pieces of clothing and studying his reflection. With each experiment, he felt more comfortable, more authentic. One afternoon, as golden light spilled across the attic floor, Jackson made a decision. He couldn't keep living as he had been, denying this essential part of himself. It was time to seek help, to explore these feelings further. With shaking hands, he pulled out his phone and searched for gender identity therapists in the area. The list of results seemed overwhelming, each name and specialty blurring together. Jackson closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and randomly selected one. Dr. Elena Martinez's warm voice answered on the third ring. "Hello, this is Dr. Martinez. How can I help you?" Jackson's voice caught in his throat. He cleared it nervously. "Hi, I'm calling because I think I need to talk to someone about gender identity." There was a brief pause. Then Dr. Martinez's tone softened further. "Of course. You've taken a very brave step by reaching out. Would you like to schedule an appointment?" Relief washed over Jackson. "Yes, please. As soon as possible." They settled on a date for the following week. As Jackson ended the call, he felt a mixture of terror and excitement. He was stepping into unknown territory, but for the first time in years, he felt hope blossoming in his chest. The days leading up to the appointment crawled by. Jackson found himself constantly distracted, his mind wandering to the upcoming session. He spent hours researching online, reading stories of others who had questioned their gender identity. Some resonated deeply, while others felt foreign. The sheer variety of experiences both comforted and confused him. When the day of the appointment finally arrived, Jackson stood before his closet, paralyzed with indecision. Should he dress as he always had, in jeans and a button-down? Or should he incorporate some of the feminine elements he'd been experimenting with in private? In the end, he chose a compromise. His usual jeans, but paired with a soft, flowing top that hinted at his inner turmoil. As he left the house, he grabbed the black velvet peplum top, tucking it into his bag. He wasn't sure why, but having it close gave him courage. The waiting room of Dr. Martinez's office was painted in soothing shades of blue and green. Jackson perched on the edge of a comfortable armchair, leg bouncing nervously as he waited to be called in. When the door opened and Dr. Martinez emerged, her kind smile immediately put him at ease. "Jackson, please, come in." The office was warm and inviting, with bookshelves lining the walls and a large window overlooking a small garden. Jackson sank into a plush sofa, hands clasped tightly in his lap. Dr. Martinez settled into a chair across from him, her expression open and non-judgmental.
"So, Jackson, why don't you tell me what brought you here today?"
For a moment, Jackson couldn't speak. Then, slowly, haltingly, the words began to pour out. He told her about finding the peplum top, about the rush of emotions it had triggered. He described the hours spent in the attic, trying on his mother's clothes and seeing himself in a new light. As he spoke, Dr. Martinez listened attentively, occasionally nodding or asking gentle questions to draw out more details. When Jackson finally fell silent, she leaned forward slightly. "Thank you for sharing that with me, Jackson. It takes a great deal of courage to confront these feelings and seek help. What you're experiencing is not uncommon, and there's no shame in exploring your gender identity." Jackson felt tears prickling at the corners of his eyes. I don't know what this means. Am I transgender, non-binary, or is this just some kind of midlife crisis? Dr. Martinez smiled softly.
Those are all valid questions, and ones that we'll explore together over time. There's no rush to label yourself or make any decisions right now. The most important thing is to give yourself permission to explore these feelings in a safe, supportive environment.
They spent the rest of the session discussing Jackson's childhood, his relationship with his mother, and his feelings about gender roles and expression. By the time the hour was up, Jackson felt both emotionally drained and strangely lighter, as if a weight he hadn't even known he was carrying had been lifted. As he prepared to leave, Jackson hesitated, then pulled the Peplum top from his bag. I brought this with me. It's the top that started all of this. Dr. Martinez nodded encouragingly.
May I see it?
Jackson handed it over, watching as she ran her fingers over the soft velvet. It's beautiful, she said, returning it to him. And clearly very meaningful to you. Perhaps you could use it as a touchstone in your journey of self-discovery. With a follow-up appointment scheduled and a list of resources to explore, Jackson left the office feeling both overwhelmed and hopeful. The world seemed different somehow, full of new possibilities. Over the next few months, Jackson continued his therapy sessions with Dr. Martinez, while slowly beginning to explore his gender identity in other ways. He started growing out his hair, experimenting with subtle makeup, and incorporating more feminine elements into his wardrobe. Each small change brought both excitement and anxiety. Jackson found himself hyper-aware of how others perceived him, constantly scanning for reactions or judgments. Some days he felt confident and empowered. Others, he was plagued by doubt and fear. Through it all, the black velvet peplum top remained his anchor. On difficult days, he would hold it close, drawing strength from the memories of his mother and the sense of authenticity it had first awakened in him. As Jackson became more comfortable with his evolving identity, he began to consider a new name. He spent hours poring over baby name books and websites, trying out different options in the mirror. Nothing felt quite right until he remembered a story his mother used to tell him about a great-aunt named Lila, known for her free spirit and unwavering self-confidence.
Lila,
he whispered to his reflection, feeling a thrill of recognition. This was it, the name that felt like home. With trembling fingers, he dialed Dr. Martinez's number. When she answered, he took a deep breath.
I've chosen a name,
he said, voice filled with a mixture of fear and excitement. Lila, I'd like to start using she, her pronouns, if that's okay. Dr. Martinez's voice was warm with pride.
Lila is a beautiful name. I'm so proud of you for taking this step. How does it feel?
Terrifying, Lila admitted with a small laugh. But also, right. Like I'm finally becoming who I was always meant to be. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of change. Lila began the process of legally changing her name and gender marker. She started hormone replacement therapy, watching with a mixture of awe and trepidation as her body slowly began to change. Coming out to friends and family was a roller coaster of emotions. Some, like her best friend Maria, embraced her immediately with open arms and unwavering support. Others struggled to understand, needing time to adjust to the change. Lila's father, in particular, had difficulty accepting her transition at first. Their relationship, already strained by years of misunderstanding, became even more fraught. But Lila refused to give up, drawing on the strength she'd found in herself and the memory of her mother's unconditional love. One evening, several months into her transition, Lila stood before the mirror in her bedroom. She was wearing the black velvet peplum top, which now fit her changing body in new and exciting ways. Her hair, longer now, framed her softening features. A light application of makeup enhanced her natural beauty. For the first time, Lila truly saw herself, not as she had been, not as she might be someday, but as she was in that moment. Imperfect, still growing, but undeniably authentic. A knock at the door startled her from her reverie. "Come in," she called, turning to see her father hesitantly entering the room. He paused in the doorway, eyes widening slightly as he took in her appearance. For a moment, neither spoke. Then, to Lila's surprise, her father's eyes filled with tears.
"You look so much like your mother,"
he said softly, voice thick with emotion. Lila felt her own eyes welling up. "Dad." He crossed the room in quick strides, enveloping her in a tight hug.
"I'm sorry,"
he murmured into her hair. "I'm sorry it took me so long to see you, to really see you." They stood there for a long moment, years of misunderstanding and pain melting away in the warmth of acceptance. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling through their tears.
"That top,"
her father said, gesturing to the peplum.
"It was one of your mother's favorites. She'd be so proud to see you wearing it now."
Lila ran her hand over the soft velvet, feeling the full weight of its significance. "It's because of this top that I found the courage to be myself," she admitted. "It's like Mom knew somehow, like she left it for me to find." Her father nodded, a wistful smile on his face. "Your mother always did have a way of knowing what people needed, even before they knew themselves. She would have been your biggest champion in all of this." As they talked late into the night, sharing memories of Lila's mother and beginning to bridge the gap that had grown between them, Lila felt a sense of peace settling over her. The journey ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges and setbacks, moments of doubt and fear, but she knew now that she had the strength to face them. The black velvet peplum top hung in a place of honor in her closet, a constant reminder of where she had come from and how far she had traveled. It was more than just a piece of clothing now. It was a symbol of self-discovery, of family love, and of the courage it takes to become one's true self. As the years passed, Lila's transition continued to unfold. She navigated the complexities of changing her body, her legal identity, and her place in the world with grace and determination. There were difficult days, of course, times when the weight of other people's expectations and prejudices threatened to overwhelm her. But through it all, she held on to the strength she had found in that dusty attic, wrapped in the soft embrace of her mother's velvet top. Lila's career flourished as she brought her authentic self to her work. Her increased empathy and understanding of diverse experiences made her a more effective communicator and leader. She became an advocate for transgender rights in her community, using her story to educate and inspire others. Her relationship with her father continued to heal and grow stronger. Together, they worked through years of misunderstandings, building a new foundation based on honesty and acceptance. He became one of her fiercest supporters, standing proudly beside her at LGBTQ+ events and defending her against any who questioned her journey. As Lila's confidence grew, so did her sense of style. She embraced fashion as a form of self-expression, often incorporating vintage pieces reminiscent of her mother's wardrobe into her outfits. The black velvet peplum top remained a cherished item, worn on special occasions as a reminder of how far she had come. On the 5th anniversary of her transition, Lila decided to host a celebration. She invited friends, family, and members of her support group to gather in her backyard for an evening of food, music, and reflection. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the gathering, Lila stood to address her guests. She wore the peplum top, paired with a flowing skirt and her mother's favorite pearl necklace. 5 years ago, she began, her voice clear and strong, I was lost. I was living a life that didn't fit, trapped in an identity that wasn't mine. But then, I found this top. She smoothed her hands over the velvet. It belonged to my mother, and somehow it helped me find myself. She paused, looking out at the faces of those who had supported her through her journey. I stand here today as Lila, fully and completely myself. It hasn't always been easy, but it has always been worth it. I'm grateful for each of you who has stood by me, who has loved me through every step of this journey. Lila raised her glass. To authenticity, to love, and to the power of a simple piece of clothing to change a life. Thank you all for being part of my story. As cheers and applause filled the air, Lila felt a profound sense of joy and gratitude wash over her. She had found her truth, her place in the world, and a community that embraced her for exactly who she was. Later that evening, as the party wound down, Lila found a quiet moment alone. She slipped away to her bedroom, standing once again before the mirror. The woman who gazed back at her was confident, radiant, and at peace. Lila ran her fingers over the soft velvet of the peplum top, smiling at the memories it held. It had been the key that unlocked her true self, a gift from her mother that transcended time and change. In its folds were wrapped not just the story of her transition, but the enduring power of self-discovery and the unbreakable bonds of family love. As she rejoined her guests, Lila carried with her the warmth of that realization. She had embarked on this journey seeking her true identity, but she had found so much more: strength, community, and a deep, abiding sense of self-love. The peplum top had been just the beginning. The rest of her story, rich with possibility, was still waiting to be written.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!